Welcome back. Your time is 4:38. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, dozens of Just Stop Oil supporters have been arrested across England for reportedly planning to disrupt airports this summer. The Metropolitan Police confirmed that 27 people have been taken into custody under the Public Order Act, which makes it illegal to conspire to disrupt national infrastructure. And here's a clip of the moment some of them were arrested.
Are you detained this at the time? Everyone is detained at this time.
At the moment in time is 1847 OK. I'm placing on for arrest for conspiracy to cause an interference to infrastructure in the UK. OK?
I've come here for food.
You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your offence if you do not mention confession something which you make behind. If you do say, you may begin evidence. OK? Yeah.
So, the grounds are that by taking part in the organisation of this event this evening, I suspect that you are taking part to cause serious disruption to UK airports.
The politicians have failed us. They've failed us with the 1.5% supposed to degrees that's supposed to keep us safe. Good luck, everybody.
Hi, so my name's Daniel. I'm being arrested. I'm not really sure why. I'm at my parents' house right now. I was just here in London visiting my parents. I think I've been told I'm under arrest for conspiracy to commit a public nuisance. Well, this is what happens when you resist the British state.
Well, they certainly just stopped the soup, and I'm joined now in the studio by Just Stop Oil spokesperson Dr. Kush. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Naker. So, on the one hand, people would say, good on them. This is proactive policing. Just Stop Oil have no right to angle grind their way into airports, disrupt the travel plans of thousands, and that could give ideas to terrorists, so they should have been arrested.
But what you need to look at is the actual laws and powers that the police have used in arresting these people. Is actually a law that was passed just last year saying that it's a criminal offence and you can be sent up to 12 months in prison for attempting to interfere with key national infrastructure. But that law has actually been very, very broadly defined. And towards the end of last year, actually, the police were using this power against Just Stop Oil to stop people protesting by stepping into the road in Parliament Square, because Parliament Square is an A road and therefore deemed part of key national infrastructure.
But it is a part of key infrastructure. For example, when ambulances can't get through, when emergency response vehicles can't get through. We've seen time and time again huge frustration for working people who can't get to work. But back to this particular instance, airports should quite rightly be very heavily protected, not just in case of people's disruption in terms of holidays. Don't suppose Just Stop Oil give a damn about that. But actually, it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. You could give ideas to all sorts of dodgy characters who might have a bit more than some orange spray paint.
But the problem with having such a broadly defined law is that you then completely leave it in the hands of the police to interpret when they want to enforce that, right? So people take part in protest marches around Parliament Square all of the time, and they're not all being arrested under Section 7 of the Public Order Act.
Yeah, but that's
when Just Stop Oil...
But they get permission for those marches and apply for a licence and tell the police. That's a separate thing altogether. When you're angle grinding through a fence and getting onto a runway, that's a completely different matter. And these laws actually, Kush, were brought in to stop Just Stop Oil because the police were standing off and soft-soaping you with tea and sympathy for months and months and months. They had to change the law to actually just stop oil. OK,
well, if you're worried about the disruption to national infrastructure, then actually have a listen to what David Attenborough said when he spoke to the UN Security Council just ahead of when UK was hosting the COP. He described that the effect of extracting and burning oil and gas is the biggest threat to our national security.
But how will stopping people getting to Magaluf for 7 days holiday have anything to do with that?
But what you need to realise is that if we've got these laws that say that we're meant to protect national infrastructure from interference, then actually why are these laws not being used against the oil and gas executives or the politicians who are allowing us to continue extracting and burning fossil fuels?
Because it's government policy to do so, and it remains government policy to do so. It's not illegal to extract oil. It is illegal to angle grind your way onto a runway, and that could be a potential terrorist threat. The law is the law.
The effects of the climate emergency will disrupt roads, it will disrupt rail, it will disrupt airports, and not only will it disrupt those that are listed on the Public Order Act, it will also threaten our food supply, our access to clean water, our access to clean air. It will threaten health systems. I work as a doctor in the NHS, and we actually need to prepare for the effects that the climate emergency is now bringing because of increases in infectious disease outbreaks, because of increases in people suffering from heat stroke.
But the UK has hit its targets consistently, way in advance of many other nations. Our net zero targets, some of the most punitive in the Western world. Why don't you go and protest in China? Change yourself to a runway in Beijing, see what happens there.
Well, there have been protests actually just outside the Chinese embassy this week against their role in financing the East African crude oil pipeline. So I think it's disingenuous to suggest that no one is targeting the Chinese.
No, I'm just saying that in terms of global pollution, Britain is way ahead of its targets. And it's making people poorer and colder.
But Britain also sparked off the Industrial Revolution, and we have benefited from the development that this country has seen from the use of oil and gas.
There's been more pollution in the last 10 years from China than in the entire Industrial Revolution from the UK since the start. The world's biggest polluters aren't Britain. I put it to you again, why don't you go and protest in countries like China or Saudi Arabia or Qatar? We know why, because they just bang you straight up in jail, and that's what's happening in Britain, and now you don't like it.
But isn't that terrifying to you, the fact that protesters, even in this country, are being treated just as they would in these other authoritarian regimes? What happened to freedom of speech in this country? What happened to democracy? Because the police can selectively use these powers to shut down protests before they even begin. It's now reaching the territory where it's becoming a thought crime to even take part in a protest that the government doesn't like. Because that's what this means, is that if the government doesn't like your protest, they can come along and send the police to arrest you.
Or you could say that Just Stop Oil activists said that what they did at Stansted, where they got the wrong Taylor Swift jet, by the way, they said that was a taste of things to come, a summer of chaos. That was your own words. That was leaked out. So you've been hung by your own petard. This is simply acting on intelligence and cutting out a threat to national security.
But taking disruptive action has been shown throughout history to be effective in creating large societal change at the rate that we need it right now.
Do you think you're winning the cause of public opinion? Because I don't.
Well, I think that people are now far more concerned about the climate crisis and demanding that their politicians act on it. And that is because of actions that Just Stop Oil have taken, getting it into the media, getting people talking about this. And so I would say that in that sense, yes, it has been a success.
People are talking about it, but in a good way. Look at the pictures on the screen there of Stonehenge being desecrated by these morons. People are talking about that, Kush, but do you think that's being talked about in a good way?
So people might not like it that we have put this cornstarch onto Stonehenge, and that's absolutely fine. But what that sparks is a conversation about the climate emergency. And when people talk about the climate emergency, it does make them realise that this is something that their politicians need to act on. And at the moment, the Tories are failing on it, Labour is failing on it, and so we need a real commitment to end the use of oil, gas and coal by 2030, and for our government to sign up to an international treaty to phase out fossil fuels.
Well, very eloquently put, and thank you very much for coming in and defending your position. Just Stop Oil spokesperson, Dr. Kush, thank you very much for coming in and explaining that to us here on GB News. Now, coming up, could Kate make a royal return next week at Wimbledon?